Hello, everybody. My name is Adam Thorne, and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. You join us here. We're recording this on a Tuesday afternoon. It is just over 24 hours since England were cruelly kicked out, robbed in the European Championships by the cheating Spanish, who apparently scored a last-minute goal, but in my view was offside. In order to talk about this tragedy of what's the word I'm looking for, Jake? Just a tragedy of
just a tragedy of a tragedy for England.
It is a tragedy, and the wider world.
But the righteous Spanish nation has risen up and reclaimed its proper place in history. I do have a Spanish grandmother.
Do you?
So I think I can claim a portion of this victory. My grandmother is Spanish. That having been said, my mother and my grandfather on her side were British. So I guess I'm not really sure how to feel.
But you have a bit of Spanish in you.
I do.
If I'd have known that, I'd just get out. It's not appropriate. Like, you should just have taken the week off work.
Well,
I don't
look,
want anybody with any Spanish.
I think you'll be saying that England won the moral victory.
We did, because we never actually lost. It was a draw, and then they had a goal which was offside. And then because it was in Germany, and the Germans also hate us, they run their semi-automated offside technology, which, uses the latest advances to work out whether it was an offside. Mm-hmm. And this clearly corrupt machine made it quite clear that the player wasn't offside, but he clearly was. So this is like a grander conspiracy involving the Germans, the Spanish, probably the wider European Union, which has still got beef with us after Brexit. So the whole thing was an appalling stitch-up. I'm only glad that I'm not in Europe now and that I'm in Australia. That gives me some small comfort.
So just to refresh our memory, what was your reaction when the Matildas were robbed of their place?
Well, they lost to England, which is the natural order of things, which was glorious. And I remember being in a pub, and it was me, and essentially like everyone else was Australian. And I was really cheering. I was doing the whole kind of, England spout of an eye, England, yeah. And because the bar manager was English, I wasn't kicked out. And I was just allowed to just throw it in everyone's face. It was great. Mm-hmm. It was great.
Mm-hmm. How the turntables, Adam.
Wow.
How the turntables.
Right, we should move on. Before we obviously talk about the news, we do have lots of shout-outs. We have, since we last recorded one of these a couple of weeks ago, we have announced some of the nominees or some of the finalists for the Australian Aviation Awards. Jake, tell us more.
Yeah, we've got a really solid, deep bench of awards finalists this year. In International Airline of the Year, we have such august names as Etihad. Etihad, yes, Etihad is in the finals. We have Vietjet is sort of maybe the scrappy underdog in the finals against Etihad. Vietjet, of course, being the Vietnamese low-cost carrier, which has done a big push into Australia over the past couple of years, alongside Air Asia. So Air Asia, Etihad, and Vietjet are the finalists for the International Airline of the Year. In Domestic Airline of the Year, we have last year's Airline of the Year winner, Rex, and they're battling it out against Nexus Airlines, which is a new airline that started up over the past year over in WA, and they're connecting sort of regional destinations in WA. We've got the cargo airline team, Global Express, and we've got Kirkhope Aviation, also known as Australian Air Safari. So those are our Domestic Airline of the Year finalists. Meanwhile, over in Airport of the Year, we've got Bankstown, we've got Cairns, Essendon Fields, and Port Hedland. So those are the names to watch for our Airport of the Year. Moving over to our individual categories, some of the big names we've got. For Executive of the Year, Alan Milne from Skytrans. We've got Paul Bennett of Paul Bennett Air Shows up for Executive of the Year. Professional Pilot of the Year, we've got Wayne Cottrell, Trent Robinson, and Peter Scott. Is it Scott or Shot?
I'm not sure. Not sure.
Whatever
it is, we apologise for not knowing.
But
what that
we apologise for not knowing and congratulate ourselves for knowing.
Yes. Well, perhaps one of the reasons that we don't know is that we obviously shortlist them, and then what happens after they get shortlisted, after they become a finalist, it then goes off to the judges. And they, we have very little to do with that. I imagine all the judges meet in a kind of a mansion and they have screaming rows and they fight like a jury. They come together and they come to their decision. We keep out of that. We have a separation from that. So we have no idea who's going to win at the moment. We have no idea who's doing well.
Of course, the talent portion of the competition is always entertaining. You get people, you get airlines up there, reciting all 50 US states and, standing on one leg and singing.
So it's essentially like the X Factor or something.
Yeah.
Australia's got... Did you have Australia's Got Talent?
They do have Australia's Got Talent.
Yeah. So presumably right now, John Sharp from Rex is, doing...
Warming up the vocal cords.
He's like, whatever it needs to win, he'll do it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's gone to the judges now, but whether you are nominated or not, if you want to come along and you go to the easiest way, go to Google and put Australian Aviation Awards in. That will take you to the website. So you can come along. It's a really good kind of networking event. You get a slap up posh meal in the Star. They're the comedian on stage, MC. Lovely night. You get to meet Jake as well. Only for 30 seconds. A lot of people want to see him.
Yeah.
So head on to the website, get your tickets. We'd love to meet you. And there's more. Earlier in the day, we have the first Australian Aviation Summit. So it's at the same location. So it's the Star in Sydney on August the 29th. And we have a stellar lineup of people. Actually, before I talk about the speakers there, the idea is it's going to be full mostly of panels talking about big industry topics. So we're going to talk about sustainability and whether aviation is going to reach net zero and how perhaps it's going to reach net zero. We're going to talk about our talent crisis post-COVID. We're struggling to get hold of skilled workers. We're going to talk about improving diversity in the industry. And we're going to talk about our kind of future drone revolution, future technology. So the idea is we're going to come here to kind of debate the big topics. And we've already got some of the biggest names in the industry that are signed up. So we already have Daniel Dott, who is the head of fuel and aviation decarbonisation at Virgin Australia. So we've got the main person at Virgin who's working on this. We've got Jesse Suskin, who basically is one of the senior people in Google Wing drone delivery. So he's going to be talking about the future and how they're doing hundreds of thousands of drone deliveries each year. We're going to be joined by aviation royalty, Captain Deborah Laurie, as I'm sure you all know, the first female airliner pilot in Australia, an absolute trailblazer. So you will be able to be there and meet her. We also have Paul Chase, the CEO of Leidos Australia. We have representative from a TW, Emily McMillan. And we've got Jesse Young, the head of flight operations at Leidos Australia as well as our very own Australian Aviation Magazine columnist, come workplace guru, Kirsty Ferguson from Pinstripe Solutions. And there will be many, many more speakers that we're going to add in the coming days. So go on the website, have a look. You can come and buy your tickets to come along to the summit. You can stay and get some tickets to come for flash dinner in the evening. It's going to be all very lovely. It's going to be all very, very cool.
Absolutely.
Come along.
And I do want to take a moment as well to just go through the remainder of the list for the executive of the year finalists, because we did only touch on two.
Yes. At consummate professional. I like that.
I try to consummate my professionalism all the time. So it's Paul Bennett from Paul Bennett Air Shows, J.L. Lingaswara from Viat Jet Air, Alan Milner Skytrans, Stephen Pearce from Surf Lifesaving New South Wales, and Claire Pearson from Little Wings. Those are our finalists for Executive of the Year. We can't as well go without mentioning our finalists for the Young Pilot of the Year, the future of the aviation industry in Australia.
Go on, Jake.
We've got Yasmin Senchik from Leidos Australia, Chloe Familton, Ramia Jasden and Lemuel Jude from Griffith University, Timothy Martin from Auriga, Georgia Rayworth from Qantas Group Pilot Academy, Amy Spicer from Girls Can Fly Anything, They Certainly Can, and Nicole Wilson of the Griffith University Soaring Society. Those are our finalists for the Young Pilot of the Year. So if you want to see who's going to come out on top, who we think is going to be the person to watch rising through the ranks of the Australian aviation industry to represent the future of aviation in this glorious great brown land of ours, come along to see the Australian Aviation Awards.
Who wouldn't want to come now? You've really whipped that up. Yeah, great. I agree with you. Perfect. Yeah, come along. And also thank you to our two principal partners, Leidos, who are working with us on our summit, and UNSW and its School of Aviation, who are working with us on our awards. Now, let's steam into the news. We've obviously been away for a couple of weeks, and we've had quite a few major stories. The first one, which it kind of seemingly came out of nowhere, was changes at Rex and the kind of potential for the former chairman of Rex to kind of potentially reclaim his position and kind of overthrow the board. It sounds like a kind of civil war. I don't want to over-tablicise it. But what's going on, Jake? What's happening at Rex?
Yeah, so this came a few weeks to a month after the announcement that Lim Kim Hai, the former executive chairman of Rex, was stepping aside, with John Sharp, deputy chairman, to take over as the non-executive chairman, as Neville Howell, the chief operating officer of Rex, steps into the position of CEO. Now, this sort of came across the ASX, I think the end of last week. Lim Kim Hai is now seeking to remove 4 directors from the board, including John Sharp, and appoint 2 new ones. So he wants Sharp gone, he wants Lee Thian Soo gone, Ronald Barch and Jim Davis. He wants them out as directors of Rex. He wants Lim Kang Song and Mukul Sool to be appointed to the board instead. He also wants that any person appointed as director on and from the 5th of July until the end of the general meeting, other than Lim Kang Song or Mukul Sool, be removed as a director. So this was he is able to make this push as a shareholder with a more than 5% stake in Rex, and it's thrown things for a bit of a loop. I think it's fair to say, Adam.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I've got to be very careful in commentating on this because we don't really know what's going on, and in fact, it doesn't sound like many people in Australia media really do know what's going on behind the scenes. But essentially, you've had John Sharp, who had, I think his title was deputy chairman, and he held that title for 20 years. But in effect, he was running the airline. He was the man on the ground. And above him as executive chairman, you had Lim Kim Hai, who was kind of technically in charge, but was kind of running the operation from Singapore. So Lim Kim Hai stepped away from a kind of a more active role, and John Sharp was effectively promoted to become chairman. And then they had a bit of a wider reshuffle within the team. And now, obviously, clearly there was more to that than meets the eye, because now Lim Kim Hai wants to come back, well, potentially wants to come back, but essentially wants to get rid of the board. So we don't really know what's going on here. I must say that John Sharp is a friend of the show. He's a friend of Australian aviation. We've had him on this podcast multiple times. I love John Sharp because he has because he's the most disgusting sense of humour, the most beautifully dry sense of humour. He's enjoying his life, but he's also a man that loves aviation. He absolutely adores it, and he also clearly loves Rex. He's been there for 20 years. It is, it's part of him, and it feels very sad to see that somebody that's been at a company for 20 years now is somebody's trying to get rid of them. Now, again, we don't know what the background is there. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it does seem like a very sad set of circumstances to someone like John, who's given his life to Rex, and certainly a lot of people there, because being a smaller airline, whether you love them or loathe them, they love it. They are invested. This isn't some big sort of soulless corporation. They're not some executives at a bank. This is a life's passion. So this all feels very, very sort of sad and confusing, would you say, Jake?
Yeah, well, and we're going to sort of keep an eye on this as things progress, because it will be interesting to see if we can find out just exactly what's going on at Rex. But hopefully it doesn't cause too much turmoil, because we do need a lot of robust competition in the aviation market, and Rex has been aiming to do that.
Yeah, and as well, don't forget that Rex did incredibly well to get through that COVID period, because you've got to think that, obviously Virgin went under, Qantas had, it was through supplemented flight, that they still had a hell of a lot of government help. Rex were never in quite that position to get anywhere near that kind of money. So to go through COVID, to get through it in one piece, to be able to launch jet operations as well, which admittedly is still on a smaller scale, but it provides much needed competition to Qantas and Virgin. They've done extraordinarily well. To be that kind of, that underdog that keeps going. So we do really need another third kind of player in the industry. So again, as Jake said, we will keep on top of that. Okay, welcome back. So just before we went for a break there, we talked about Rex and the kind of troubles at Rex, and about why it's important to have a third player. And you see what I'm doing here, Jake? There's a link coming.
Yeah.
Don't leave me hanging. Because usually at this point, I throw the link out for you. You look confused and I look like an idiot. So we'll not do that again. Okay.
Yep.
So we're talking about the importance of competition.
Yes,
and
I'm
why
with
it's
you.
important to have a smaller player. That brings us on to another story that we wrote about today, doesn't it, Jake?
Yes, it does.
And that story would be...
Oh, the story.
Yes,
So
go
this
on.
story is Vanessa Hudson, the CEO of Qantas, speaking in Perth at the launch of the new non-stop Paris service, which sort of got wheels up over the weekend, using their 787 Dreamliners to fly non-stop between Perth and Paris. By the way, just as an aside, they appear to have fixed their problem, which affected the Perth to London flights. As you know, things are a bit dicey in the Middle East at the moment, and Qantas was needing to avoid Iranian airspace when they were heading uphill towards London.
They found a shortcut as they were trotting up the hill.
They did. It's sort of threading the needle a bit, but they found this route that goes over Iraqi and Turkish airspace. So they are avoiding Iran entirely without having to divert to Singapore like they were doing for a few weeks in April. Good on you, Qantas. Anyway, speaking at the launch of this Perth to Paris service, Qantas CEO Vanessa Hudson kind of suggested that there's no real room for more domestic airlines in the Australian aviation market, particularly following the collapse of Bonza. This is a quote from her. She said, "If you think about why three airlines really struggle, it's a number of things. Our population, the US has 250 million people, we have 26 million. It's spread between the economics of being a viable airline. It's incredibly challenging because it's capital intensive." She said, "The next biggest challenge is decarbonization. That is significant. We believe no one can be winners or losers from decarbonization. Everyone should be doing it. And I don't think there's sufficient volume to sustainably support a significant growth in the number of players, but we want to grow." She also said, quote, "We are an island nation. Our economy relies on domestic aviation and the role that we play as a national carrier. We want airlines and Virgin and Rex. We want them to be sustainable. And to be sustainable, they've got to be making a certain amount of revenue to invest. We don't want a weak aviation market."
Yeah, now see, there's two sides to every story. And one side of the story that she was saying was that she's completely correct. It is an island nation. It's a smaller population. History suggests you can't have more than one or two big players. It never works. The argument against what she's saying is that is rubbish. And actually, the reason we can't have any more competition is because Qantas is such a monstrous thing. It's got so much market share. And actually, she's saying that it's kind of like mind games. It's almost like when the CEO of Qantas says, "Oh, another competitor will never succeed," that's a self-fulfilling thing. They don't want any competition at all.
Well, exactly, and we saw from Bonza one of the reasons that Tim Jordan, the CEO of Bonza, went to 777 Partners, who again, proved to be somewhat unreliable investors. But one of the reasons why he went to 777 Partners was that the prevailing view was that you couldn't break into the market against Qantas and Virgin, that it couldn't be done. And so local investors didn't really want to have a go at it. And unfortunately, that the collapse of Bonza, which, was due in no small part to undercapitalization on the part of 777 Partners, at least according to the administrators, now liquidators, called Chadwick, one of the major factors this undercapitalization, but it's going to be sort of taken and held up again as evidence that you can't have more airlines in Australia. There's not the room. When we saw that quite a few of Bonza's routes were doing pretty well.
Yeah, and also, so firstly, if you were Bonza, you would say that actually it's very hard to compete when one company has such a massive market share. But Rex and Bonza would say actually one of the reasons is they struggle to get slots at airports as well. They struggle to even get a foothold. So they would argue that the whole system is stacked against them. So Qantas will say, well, that's just how it works. For me, I think this idea that Australia needs to move on from this idea, we're a tiny little country with a tiny little population, we're never going to be able to have any more than that. That is absolute poppycock. In fact, I think there's very few markets in the world where there's so little competition. There is no reason why you couldn't have more. That's just how it happens to evolve. I should say, if you're Qantas, this isn't a dig at Qantas. This is because Qantas has made some very savvy business decisions. Qantas have played their hand absolutely beautifully, so you can't knock them for having this power base. But at the same time, I don't think that this is something that, this is just how it is forever.
I mean, look at Jetstar, as an example of this incredibly savvy business decision. Qantas back in the early 2000s saw Virgin Blue coming in. They saw, Ansett collapse, and they thought, right, we've got to get in this low cost thing. And so they spun up Jetstar to compete directly against Virgin Blue, and it's possibly the most successful low cost arm of any full service carrier on the planet.
Yeah, exactly. They've also, they've done very well, obviously, by the collapse of Tiger Air. They've done very well, you could argue, in Virgin shifting to this kind of mid-market position. So they now effectively are the only true full-service airline. So they've got the market to themselves. So the question obviously is, will we eventually get a competitor with deep pockets that's willing to have a go? Arguably, we had that in the old Virgin Australia. Or two, whether the government would at some point come in and artificially try to break up Qantas, which I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea, but that obviously would be one enormous move for any government to make. Yeah,
it's Qantas is I mean, you saw during the pandemic, Qantas was in a lot of ways too big to fail. They had to support Qantas because, with Virgin sort of floundering during the pandemic, Australia still needed a national, a big airline to connect everything. Even during the pandemic, people still needed to go interstate for various reasons, particularly government officials. So. Is Qantas too big to fail? No. One could argue.
I can't remember the exact details, but I think I'm sure you wrote a story on Miss Jake. It was about a ACCC, like one of their quarterly reports, and they basically said in the routes where Bonza had gone in, it brought prices down. I'm not going crazy.
Yeah. So they were talking about this increasing competition had sort of dragged airfares, downwards with it. More competition means, more incentive to come in with lower prices. And in fact, I think we saw when Rex started flights from Melbourne to Perth, they put on sale prices of, I think, $99 one way. I think what we saw not so long afterwards was Virgin doing a sale to Perth with those same or lower fares. So, putting on more competition between the East Coast and Perth has already been affecting airfares between the East and West Coasts. And for a time while Bonza was operating, I think it was the route that was Melbourne, Tullamarine to the Gold Coast. It was the first time ever in Australian history that there were 4 different airline groups operating the same route. That being, Qantas Group, Virgin, Rex, and Bonza. So we do need, I think, more of this competition to add choice to the industry and to bring those airfares down and make air travel more affordable.
It's not just as well airfares. Like we saw with Bonza, they were putting on routes that no one had ever put on before.
Yes.
And they were told, or everyone basically said, it will never work. And there was a great quote by Alan Joyce, and I don't think he meant it in a nasty way to be fair to him, but he kind of said, we've been going for however many decades. We think we know which routes are going to work. If we've missed some, then shame on us. If we've missed us, then shame on us. We don't think we have. But clearly Qantas had, because we saw Jetstar go into one of Bonza's routes from the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah, they Jetstar sort of, hours after the liquidator Hall Chadwick released the report saying that that Bonza should be wound up, Jetstar pounced, and this is one situation where I really wish that Tiger Air had survived, because I wish I could say that Tiger Air had pounced. That would be a much better headline. But Jetstar pounced on that route from Cairns to the Sunshine Coast, which apparently Bonza had been making a pretty good go of.
Yeah, so you need fresh ideas. You need fresh ideas into the market. And the other, and in no way would I ever suggest, and I actually don't think that there is, lots of collusion between Qantas and Virgin. But at the same time, if you've got two established big players and they both kind of know their turf, there's not much of a reason for anyone to go and shake that up if they're both doing, perfectly well in their lanes. You need those plucky little sods like Rex and Bonza, who are a bit more scrappy, going in there and having a go. That's how new things happen. Otherwise, we see no change whatsoever. Anyway, let's move on and let's talk about something else. Jake, what are we going to talk about next? It's Dealer's choice.
So next we should probably have a look at some very good news for people who like being able to get to airports easily.
And who doesn't? The only thing better that, the only thing not better than flying is getting to somewhere where you can just go on, Jake. I've lost my.
I don't know where you were going, but we had a week or two ago, during our break from the podcast, some good news finally on the Melbourne Airport rail, with the airport basically throwing in the towel and giving up on its plans for the underground airport station in favour of the above ground option that had been pushed forward all along by the state government. This came after the mediators report from the federal government, from Neil Scales there, basically said, it's that the above ground solution would be the better option. So Melbourne Airport under fire from all sides, essentially, including the federal government, the state government, the TWU, as they waved the white flag, and they announced that in the interest of getting this rail link finally built, they were going to support the above ground station.
So basically, the mediator came in, the referee, the parent had come in and just went, stop squabbling and get on with it.
Essentially, yeah. And I think stop squabbling and get on with it was the attitude of most people towards the Melbourne Airport rail link at this point, because it's a saga that's been going on for way too long.
It is a saga that's going on way too long, but we still don't really know exactly when they're going to get cracking with this thing, because bear in mind the announcement was made, I think, late 2020. I seem to remember Dan Andrews, I think, and Scott Morrison on a very awkward Zoom call or whatever it was to make the announcement. We still don't have a clue on this is going to happen. They've been talking about a train link in Melbourne for hundreds, I think thousands of years, since the dawn of mankind.
Since before Melbourne even existed.
Before Melbourne even existed, when it was simply protons and neutrons.
They're back in the primordial soup, various protozoans were asking various amoebas when there was going to be a rail link. Is that actual real
science, or have you made that up? Is that actual? Because I don't know. I'm terrible at science.
Well, I know that protozoans and amoebas are real things, so.
It sounds like how Jedis use the Force. But anyway.
That's midi-chlorians.
Oh,
I
gosh,
think
you're
find,
such a
Adam.
nerd, aren't you? It's midi-chlorians.
Yeah, it's actually, Adam, it's midi-chlorians. Midi-chlorians are how they use the Force.
Go on. Anyway, so we still don't actually have a date as when this is going to start.
It's been delayed already for 4 years. And I think, the Victorian Premier, Jacinta Allen, was like, look, we can't wish away the time that's been spent, that's been wasted squabbling over this airport rail link, but now we can finally start moving and getting things done. And the Victorian government had kind of been moving and getting things done already. It had acquired, this parcel of land for the station at Keilor East, I think, which is going to serve Keilor East and the Airport West precinct on the rail link. And they're also moving ahead with plans to turn Sunshine Station into this, big rail hub that's going to link the Melbourne Airport line into the rest of the Melbourne trains system. By the way, just want to address a little thing here. You will not have to change trains at Sunshine to get into the city. You can go directly from Melbourne. Once the rail link is built, you'll be able to go directly into the CBD from the airport. No change at Sunshine necessary. Sunshine's just where it's going to link up with the rest of the trains. Okay?
The public service announcement there. I like you look straight into the camera. You're talking right to the right.
Completely lost on anyone who's listening to this on Spotify.
Well, yeah. Anyway, let's go for one more break. When we come back, we'll talk some more nonsense. We'll be back in a minute. All right, welcome back. So, just to finish off talking about the news, we also had, let's just talk about the backstory here. So Qantas unveiled a very flashy new safety video. What was this, a few months ago? And the controversy was that it was, I think to quote Jake Nelson, it was too clever by half, basically.
I may have said something to that effect.
It was very insightful. And effectively, the criticism of this safety video, that it was at no point was anyone actually on a plane. At no point did you actually ever see a plane. And the video came shortly after the Japan Airways incident with the A350 earlier this year, where, as you may remember, the aircraft came into land and basically went up in a big ball of fire. But incredibly, all the passengers managed to get off the aircraft. One, that was because, or supposedly because, the kind of new generation of aircraft, their fuselage is built of a material which is both lighter and stronger, which kind of gave those on board crucial extra minutes to get out. But also, it was because of the very clever flight safety video, which was really, really simple, really straightforward. It wasn't trying to be clever. And also it showed the consequences of actions. It was like, if you do not do that, if you shove your baggage and if it's sticking out of the overhead locker, it could fall over and hit somebody. If you are messing about trying to drag your suitcase off the plane as the plane is on fire, you will stop other people escaping, etc., etc. So there was a lot of stick for Qantas's new safety video. We have effectively, in so many words, had a response from another airline with a new sort of series of safety videos. Jake, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so this was from Emirates now. Interestingly, a code share partner of Qantas. And Emirates has come out with this safety video. It doesn't directly sort of mention Qantas or any other airlines' videos, but they sort of obliquely say, there's this, you've got the flight attendant coming out at the start saying, this is your no-nonsense safety video. We don't have dancers breaking into song, characters from movies, or celebrities trying to be funny, I'm afraid. Yeah, a little bit. But then another crew member says, at Emirates, safety always comes first. It's important that we take you through some safety features before takeoff, and then you can all get back to our award-winning entertainment system. So basically they're saying, all these glossy, travel things and, cartoon characters and, celebrities making jokes, leave that to the entertainment system. We're here to tell you how to be safe on a plane. And the entire video is shot on one of Emirates' planes. Looks like they're one of their A380s. But it has flight attendants and passengers demonstrating safety in the context of an actual aircraft. So yeah, this is in stark contrast to the one that the Qantas put out, which had a lot of glossy location shots that people were saying, well, this is just self-promotion for all the lovely places that Qantas flies to. Now, we got in touch with Terry O'Toole from the Flight Attendants Association of Australia, their national secretary. She had been one of the critics of Qantas's video earlier in the year, but she said that basically Emirates offering, she had no complaints. She said, quote, the Emirates video points out the errors made by other airlines using these videos as travel blogs. The reality is that passengers need to know what to do in an emergency, and the chances of survival and avoiding serious injury are increased when they pay attention. She said the video is clear. It is showing cabin crew who are the first responders in uniform and on the aircraft. It highlights the necessary information to make sure every passenger is safe. It's a job well done and no doubt cost a lot less than some of the other more extravagant and exotic ones that we have seen.
Nod, nod, wink, wink.
Yes.
So the question is then, do we think this is the end of the too clever by half safety video? Now that everyone's gone down, or Emirates has gone down this pathway, do you think we're going to see this continue, or is this fad over now?
It's a good question. I mean, some of those safety videos are fun. Like the sort of 100-year history of Qantas one was a bit of a fun one. That was shot on actual Qantas planes. It is. I think you don't have to sort of go you don't have to necessarily go all the way of, just no nonsense, here's the facts, ma'am. You can, it's you can make the argument that it's good to keep the passengers' attention.
Yeah.
But you can go too far with that,
that's the argument with Qantas' video, that they almost went a bit too funky.
Yes.
People on the beach. Whereas like you said in the previous iteration where they were talking about the history of Qantas, they all had like moustaches and crazy mullets and stuff. But they were on an aircraft. There was still an element that they did work.
Now, a lot of those aircraft were not aircraft that Qantas flies anymore. But
very true, very true. And there was a couple of, I think, pretty poor jokes about like, don't have an e-cigarette, whatever that is, and what have you.
A bit corny, but well, what
You've done worse
you
jokes, haven't you? Every day.
Yeah, every day.
Every day.
So it's a good move by Emirates, I think, to sort of refocus everything on passenger safety. And here's what you should actually do in the event of an emergency, rather than look how wonderful the LA skyline is when we're sort of parked over it. And by the way, my car has a aircraft seatbelt in it for some reason.
No, I completely agree. Right. It's almost time to end the show. Do we have anything else we want to talk about before I end the show and you go, well, hang on a minute, Adam, Don't just send it right there.
I do want to give a bit of a congratulations to Life Flight, the aeromedical organisation based up in Queensland. They have announced, for the financial year 2023, that they have saved helped a record number of people, 8,177 people in the 2024 financial year.
How many, sorry? Say that again.
8,177. That's up 11.2% on the previous year.
So that's the financial year? For
the financial year,
so
yeah.
8,000?
8,000 people.
But there's 365 days a year. I'm not very good at maths. That's a lot of people every day.
Yeah. Well, apparently the Life Flight rescue crews helped 157 patients a week on average, which equates.
157 a week?
Yeah, that's just a little under 1 an hour. So that's they're doing phenomenal work up there, and congratulations to Life Flight.
Yeah, I assumed it would be like 10% of that number.
No, they're doing well. They're doing well. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's necessarily good news that a whole lot of people are possibly needing more
getting
medical.
in trouble in the first place.
But the fact that they've been able to respond to so many things and that they've been able to help so many people is just such good news. So congratulations to Life Flight on that. Well done from us.
That's a great way to end the show. And congratulations. That's really impressive. All right, we will be back on this show the same time next. Actually, no, I've got to say goodbye from me, goodbye from you. So yeah, what do we usually? Is that how we usually do it?
It's
something like that. My brain's a bit scrambled.
Yeah, I think we've sort of drifted away from that format recently. By the way, Adam, I can now talk about my next big production.
Here we go. Yeah, good. It's a good job we said that.
The cat is out of the bag.
The embargo has been lifted.
Yes, if any of you are in Sydney and are fans of both musical theatre and Baz Luhrmann, my next production is Strictly Ballroom the musical.
Strictly Ballroom the musical.
Strictly Ballroom.
Right, hang on a minute. You can do a better plug than that. When is it? When's it actually happening?
It's at Model Farms High School with Hills Musical Theatre Company in November, and I will be playing the dance competition MC JJ Silvers.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. If people want to buy tickets, what do they do? Do they just go on Google and tap it? What do they tap in on Google?
Hills Musical Theatre Company. I'm not sure if tickets are on sale yet.
No.
But when they are, Hills Musical Theatre Company is the place to find it.
Prioritise getting tickets to the Australian Aviation Summit.
Of course.
Then you can go.
If you've got a bit of cash left over and you want to
exactly
get your Luhrmann on, Baz Luhrmann, not the other one, then Model Farms High School in November. Strictly Ballroom.
Good. That sounds very exciting. Right, we will be back on this show the same time this week, but for now, from me and Jake, goodbye.
Goodbye.